mind you that not all open source projects or softwares are free, like free as in you paying money for it, right? So a proprietary software could be free, but um it's the code base is not how they made it, like the particular pattern in which they made it, or their guidelines, or their community, their internal stuff, everything is closed. It's proprietary, it's guided under a license that you cannot see it. So a popular example I would love to use, if you are familiar with the Windows operating system, I'm sure some people use, the people of Enyata, they use Macs. So that's not a joke, by the way, but I see a lot of them with Macs, and then Enyata does this. Precious is already saying you all use Mac, so you can't relate to Windows. I used to use Windows sometime. But yeah, if you're familiar with even though you don't use it, you should be familiar with the Windows operating system. So another two examples I love to use to explain open source is the Windows operating system and the Linux operating system. So one of them is a closed source software, and the other is an open source software. So just be sure that people are following me. Can someone maybe tell me which one is closed source and which one is open source?
I
Okay.
think Windows is a closed source, while Linux is open source.
Yeah, that was sorry, what's your name? I'm not seeing the chat. That's why I can't know who's speaking.
Lookman.
Okay, Lukman, that was like a very correct answer, Lukman. Windows is a closed source software. In Nigeria, Windows is not a free software self. Like, in you have to pay for it. It's just in Nigeria we have like crack versions of it. So Windows is even not a free software first. But yeah, Windows is a closed source software, and Linux is another operating system. If you do not know what Linux is, you can just do a quick Google search Linux operating system and you can see what it is. But it's an open source software that was created by Linus Torvald in a year I cannot remember. But yeah, I think 2000 and something. But yeah, in a year I cannot remember. But yeah, that's an example of an open source software. For Linux, you can see how Linux, or if you want to see how the kernel was built, you can go back and see how it was built. You can see everything. And there's even the Linux Foundation that has a lot of other projects that were built on Linux kernel. And if you're familiar with Linux, you know that Linux has distros, and yeah, it's like different distributions. People have made the enhancements to how Linux was from the start. So I hope that kind of draws like an explanation. I dwelled here so that you would deeply understand the keywords. It must not be free, but the code base will be open, like the pattern will be open, and you can make edits to it, you can contribute to it, and you can also make enhancements and redistribute it as your own. I have a lot of examples, but I'll just pause there. So now I want to go into because there are sometimes when you randomly ask people why contributing to open source, they have a whole lot of things to say, right? There are some people that feel that open source is just about code, like it's just code. I can't as a product manager, I don't see how I can contribute to open source when everybody talks about open source like it's just code. First, I'll let you know that open source is not just about code. And then there's another part where people feel that because you're 2 days in tech, you cannot make a valuable contribution. That's not true. I would love you to note that your level of skill set is kind of like welcome in open source contributions. Open source contributions is also not a waste of time, it's a big career booster. And designers can also contribute to open source. Every set of tech role can contribute to open source. So if you're in this call and you've had any of these beliefs before, please drop it in the bin. Yeah, so that's one thing I want to say. And then the next section of this talk is so I know I've kind of like talked about what open source is and what it is not. So why, what does it help your career for? Like, how does it help you? How does it impact on your career if you're growing, if you're even a pro already, if you're a senior dev or whatever stage of your career it is in, how does it kind of like affect you? So number one is it improves your technical skills. You get to learn about new tools, you get to learn about new technologies. Personally, I started contributing to open source when I started coding. Like I just finished school and I was learning how to code in Python, and I started contributing then, even though I'm not still doing like code. But yeah, I've improved in a lot of technical skills in the past 2 years plus. So like I've learned new skills with the communities I have participated in, with different things, even with participating in events, in speaking. I've also learned things, learned new technologies, learn new tools. So it kind of like improves and widens your technical experience, which tops the list for me. Number two is you could bring up an idea and you could make it a reality with the power of open source, because like in open source there's one thing, collaboration. And when you have an idea, it can be like a an idea that's not fully formed, but with sharing your idea, building it, building in the open, you get to actualize on that reality, on that idea rather, and build a lot of product out of it and build something sustainable out of it with people that might not even be in the same level as you are. People that are even more experienced than you could collaborate with you to work on your stuff. Another part is you gain soft skills along the way. Trust me, I did not used to talk this fluently before. I used to be scared of doing putting myself out there or speaking or doing anything. You could gain a lot of soft skills, how to manage people, like the community lead role I earlier talked about in my intro. I have been contributing to communities, but in the past, like last month, I had to lead a community, and that's a new thing I'm learning, right? Managing a community. So that's the thing that open source gives you. You get to gain skills, learn how to work with people, because there's something about building in the open. There's sometimes it can get it can get messy, and your feelings might get in the way, and then you get to learn how to control these things and focus on what you're building. So open source can kind of like um you know help you pick up soft skills that would improve your career. So at this part, I'll ask if everybody's hearing me, because I'm kind of like I'm very insecure with my network. So
Yeah.
okay, great. So yes, so let's move on to the other parts of how open source can help your career. So another part is remote work experience. Um, Open source helps you work with people that are not in your local community. You get to work with people that are, because it's a when you join open source communities, it's always a global thing. There are people that are working on the project that are like in a different continent, in another part of the world, that is even like say 7 hours ahead of you. And yeah, you get to work with those people and you get to gain remote work experience. So that's one really important thing, and you get to learn how other cultures work, how they do things. Recently, I've been learning a lot about how Europeans kind of like work and how they do things. Right, you get to work with people that are even Chinese people. You get to work with like Indians. You see how they work, how they do their things. Sometimes we have like happy hours where you get to learn their culture as well, how they interact with people. So you get that remote work experience, because so like on a global scale. And the next thing, which is really, really important, that people really talk about every time, on Twitter, on events, you need to network, you need to grow your network so that it's going to help you in future, or it's going to help you get a job, blah 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 blah, all those kind of things. But yeah, it's really really important. That network, it helps you get that network, and it helps you like kind of collaborate with other people. I've had times where I would collaborate with people that are in like top companies that I would have not even gotten access to if I wasn't contributing to that project. So you get to create something good. And also, open source is not just free; they are paid. Like you get good money. There are internships like Google Summer of Code, um, Google Season of Dogs, Outreachy, and then they are quite good, like good amounts of money. You get to work with an open source project for like three months, and then I think for Outreachy pays like $6,000 for that 3 months. So that's like a good amount of money, right? So you get to work. There are also people that are paid like full time to work on open source, like not as an internship. There are people that are paid full time in companies to kind of like work on open source. You could get them. There are also bounty programs as well, that you could just work on an issue and get paid for working on that issue. There are a whole lot of paid opportunities that are also available within open source. Why I put this thing as the last, because number one is attractive and Nigerians love money. So yeah, like I put it as the last so that it does not tell you that open source is just about like the money, but it's just to keep you aware that yeah, you can contribute and get paid for your contributions. So yeah, where do you start from? That's the big question. Where do I get started? Okay, I've heard all these interesting things, especially about money, but where do I get started from? I want to start. So you have to find the projects to contribute to first. You have to make that search. Sometimes it's quite hard to find projects, honestly. I could give a few tips during my demo on how to find projects to contribute to. I could also recommend projects that I do contribute to as well. Yeah, so finding projects to contribute to. You could also join communities to learn and collaborate and grow. Like I said, I recently started up a community, like a local chapter of an open source project I've been contributing to here in Africa. So I can also recommend that. There are open source communities that you could join. From the community I started, Chaos Africa, there are like other open source communities that you could join to collaborate with others and learn and also grow. You could start by making meaningful contributions. Sometimes it's not like about okay how many changes you make to that community or to that project. So always prioritize, think of quality. Think of prioritizing quality over like sending a bunch of pull requests and not like spams and all that stuff. So that's how you can get started. Like while that enthusiasm, while I've tried to spark that enthusiasm and that passion in you, I would want to tell you about like how you can contribute effectively when you join a community or when you find a project. So number one thing is, while everybody, for some persons, being vocal is a preference, I always encourage that when you join a community or you join a project or you find a project, you try to be vocal about your concerns, ask questions, participate in the meetings, try to voice out. Because if sometimes, while open source projects have a good way, some projects have a good way of kind of like onboarding you, you have to be vocal about your concerns for people to know where they need to help you. So when you join a community, try to be vocal, try to ask questions, introduce yourself, try to be patient. Because while it's open source, there are some people that have full-time jobs, are working in the community or in the project, and sometimes it can take some time for your question or your pull request to be attended to. You should be patient, and also to not take code reviews personally. I've had times where I've had to work on a particular change a lot of times because it wasn't up to the standard. So in that process, you just learn. And that thing is creating like a niche for yourself. So what I mean by this is creating a space where you can grow. Like, okay, for example, let me use myself for an example. So when I started contributing to open source, what I did was I found a problem, right? I found a problem that beginners find it kind of like difficult to navigate in the space to even come in. So I said, okay, I was going to make every time I speak, um, it's always about getting people involved in open source. You know, telling people how they can do it, how they can go from here to here. So that was like a niche I kind of like created for myself, and I'm growing in that space. I'm doing a lot of things in that space, and everything I do just centers around, you know, beginners, bringing more people in and helping them settle down with things. So you could find a niche for yourself. You can define that for yourself and know where you want to shine the light on. So yeah, the quick demo. So the quick demo is just me doing some one open source, very a very simple, minute open source contribution. And I'm so sorry, I'm going to be using GitHub because I know some people might not be familiar with GitHub, but yeah, I'm just going to be using that to demo because I'm originally a developer, so forgive me. So yeah, let me just exit my screen. Let me see. Can everybody see this? Make your first contribution in 5 minutes.
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, so I'm going to send this in the chat, and everybody, or as many as can, like if you have a GitHub account, you're going to join me in making your first contribution in 5 minutes. Is there a yay from people? Like, are people going to join me with this?
Yeah, I'll join.
Great. Okay, so I think the people saying yes are people that have GitHub accounts. If you don't have, just watch us. Don't worry, it's going to be fun. So okay, so I think the people that are joining have the link, and so let's get started. So when you get started, it takes you to the GitHub repository, right? So let's go to the main branch. This just redirects you to another branch. So this is the link we're going to, just in case you get lost with navigating that. Yeah. So this is the GitHub repository. So I'm an I'm a new contributor to open source, and I want to make my first contribution. So this project is just a project that kind of like helps beginners contribute to open source. It's just adding your name. Or have they changed things around this? Let me see. Um okay, so let's go through the so when you find an open source project, the first thing you do is go through the readme. The readme kind of like explains what the project is about. Readme, like it says, readme, so you have to read it. So it kind of like helps you explain what the project is about and how you can contribute to it. Most of the time it gives you like a step. You can see the different steps. Fork the repository, clone it, and create a branch, and um open the contributors.md file, add your name to it, and so it gives you a direct step. So that's why you have to check the readme. Sometimes people do not put it on the readme, they put it on the contributing.md file. There's a contributing.md file where you can get details, but for this repository it is on the readme. So for the people following up with us, so the first thing we are doing, the only thing we are doing in this repository is just add your name to this file, contributors.md. That's what you can see, that 3 hours ago somebody added their name. So you see that this project is very popular. It's just for people to understand the concept of open source. So I'm going to be add. I think my name is in here, but I'm going to add, like, I have like plenty names, so I'm just going to add another name. So the first thing is you fork the repository. So forking the repository means making it a copy of your own. If you go back to the explanation, if you're here when I did like the explanation of what open source is, it's you can make the project your own. You can make a copy of the project and enhance it. So we're going to fork the repository. That's the first thing. So I have created fork. So it's currently working it. Okay, so now I have the repository. You see that it will change in your name. So the next thing is we are following through with the readme. So we have done this step. The next step is to clone it to your to your machine. But in this case, I'm just going to be making the contribution on the GitHub UI. I don't have any strength with to start doing it. But I'll just do this on the UI, on the GitHub UI, like just here. So what I just want to do is add my name. Initially, you have to clone this to your local system, and I do have access to code spaces, so let me just use that. So code spaces, what code spaces is for developers. I think you get this point better, but code spaces is just your local machine on the cloud. So I do have beta access to this. So let's do it on. So I creating this code space is just a copy of me doing it on your local system, right? It's just the same thing we're doing it on your local system, just that it's on the cloud. Am I losing anybody here? Okay, great. So you see, it looks like VS Code. It's VS Code on the cloud. So not everybody has access. I do have beta access. That's why I can do this. But yeah, so remember what I said. We have passed the next step of I'm going back to the readme. See, even myself that I've been doing, I'm still going back to the readme. So always use the contributor guide for as your guide. So we've done the second step. We've cloned the repository to your local system, or contributing on the GitHub UI. So the next thing, they want us to create a branch, right? Now you do these commands for developers. If you're a developer, you'll be familiar with if you know Git is also an open source software. It's what they call this thing again? It's a version control system, something like a time travel machine where you get to like time travel is not the original. I'm just using an example, so you don't quote me that I said Git is a time travel machine. But yeah, it's just a software that helps you save a copy of your project and help you track your changes, the changes you make to the project. So let's go back to my VS Code on the cloud. So the next thing we are doing, we have to change directory to first contributions. That's the first command we are running. So I'm just going to copy this and come back here and open the terminal. So I paste this command V. Oh, shit. So cd first contributions. What? Okay, allow. Okay, once. Okay, so this is the command. I have run the command, the first command, cd first contributions. So it has changed directory into, okay, there's no such directory. Hold on a sec. Let me just go there from here. Where's that file path? Okay, contributors.md. So this is the file that we are adding our name into. The contributors.md file. So I will just go down here. I think it's in alphabetical order. I don't think so. You can add your name anywhere. Well, I can make the change anywhere. So let me just, because this is a lot of names. So let me just add my name somewhere here. Let me check the readme again to be sure that I need to add my name. I can add my name anywhere. Okay. Now open the add your name to. Okay, they said do not add it at the beginning or at the end. Put it anywhere in between. You see why I had to come back here, because I would have added my name at the beginning. But let's find a way to fix this. Let's find a way to create a branch first. So